very hard to see. So what we've done is we've put a couple copies of the slide deck at most tables to write on right. But feel free to share that amongst your table as well if you're having a hard time reading it. All right, so Brian's going to kick us off.
All right, great. First of all, good afternoon, y'all. I'm Brian. Some of y'all know me. Some of y'all know a lot about me from my orientation. But if I haven't met you, I'll introduce myself in a second. We want to ground ourselves today with the code of ethics. Some of us have seen this before, and we're going to see it again, but we really want to set an incredibly strong foundation today. I so fully believe that folks walk into this education space with the best of intention, and we want to ensure that intention turns into reality with ethical behavior throughout our organization. So, if we can take about 90 seconds to read this statement. 90 seconds to read this statement.
Yeah, there are slide decks on your table if you'd like to share those.
Partner up with one person at our table and discuss what resonates, what stands out from this statement. Let's take about 98 seconds. Go. Let me also say too, just preemptive. Shout out to everyone in here for the level of engagement needed to do this work. And so I love the interaction. I love the discussion. Placing ourselves in as our future self in time, as we are directly serving kids and families, and having that in our heart as we facilitate and engage in the session. So I'd love to hear a few comments. What resonates? I'll just take hands for a big group. What resonates?
What I got from it was basically like teaching me to hold the integrity of being a teacher. Basically like, not helping students to cheat on tests and everything. Really standing, holding the
Set the bar for integrity. Thank you. All right, anybody want to add, build up? Yes, in the back. Thank you.
I appreciate that in the Texas law it says equitable.
Oh, can I pause real quick? I know we are such a large group, and if you sat in my talent orientation session for Yes Prep, to me, active listening is one of the most most profound ways we can show respect. So I want to make sure if any of us are sharing in this space that we can be heard. So I apologize for interrupting. Would you mind?
Oh, I was just saying, I appreciate that the Texas law says equitable. I wouldn't expect that out of the Texas law, but it says it, so that's great that it's in the law.
All right. So, thank you. For today's session, one, we want to acknowledge that every educator handbook is a safe reference. It's mandatory. So we're going to sit in that level of engagement to deeply understand and internalize, not just because the TEA says it, but if you take the root of that statement, there's a lot of profound brilliance in us striving to achieve that level of effort. Next, we're going to demonstrate basic knowledge on the standards in that code of ethics. And lastly, the actual enforcement. So there's what to do and what not to do. There's actual the enforcement and the consequences of said statement. So we're going to introduce ourselves.
All right, y'all. So Tiffany briefly introduced myself today, but we think it's important that, like, before we talk about like the law and some of the more unsavory things that Brian and I get to experience in our roles, that you guys know a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Stephanie Gather. Teacher American board members in the room. Raise your hands. Okay, Brian and I, so both Brian and I are Yes Prep employees, but we are both actually also Teacher America alumni and have worked for Teacher America in some sort of capacity in the past. So you guys, I am celebrating my 15th anniversary of attending TFA Institute, which is really crazy and exciting. Which also, like, fun fact about myself, means my 15th anniversary of knowing my husband. And so, great thing, I found my two loves. Seriously though, like, little fun fact, I found my two loves during TFA Institute. Appreciate it. The love of education and, like, the person who I love and have children with. So, a little bit about my role. So as the managing, thank you guys for working with me. As the managing director of teacher development, I oversee really anything that has to do with teacher growth in our organization. So I oversee our programs for developing our new teachers, so Teaching Excellence, New to Blue. I also oversee a lot of the work around your campus instructional coaching. So I support your needs of instruction, your directors of academics, and your principals and teacher coaching. I work on teacher evaluation, and I support with some of the initiatives around like recognition, compensation, celebration of teachers. Basically anything that relates to teaching, I absolutely love. This is my second month in the role. Prior to that, I've had a variety of roles. This is my 12th year, I think, 13th year at Yes Prep. I've been ahead of school, so I've managed the principals at Yes Prep Northside, Yes Prep Southeast, Yes Prep North Forest, and Yes Prep North Line. Spent some time at another organization as a chief academic officer. Raise your hand if I was your principal in high school. Yay! So I was the principal at both Yes Prep Raise Oaks and Yes Prep Northside. And then if there's an instructional leadership position in the system, I've had it. Like, this is my passion, this is what I love to do. Quick thing just to know about me, I will be here about 50% of the time. When I'm not here, I'm supporting our campus-based instructional leaders in their professional development for the year.
GNO, does anybody know what that stands for? Like I said, that is my name. I graduated from the University of Florida, joined the program Teach for America. In 2003, began teaching in New Orleans, Sarah Curie Senior High, in Orleans East. My third year, Katrina hit. Katrina not only obviously physically destroyed my school building, the community was completely tore up. I made my way to Houston as a result and found my way to Yes Prep. This coming year will be my 16th year at Yes Prep. So I believe not only deeply in this work, but doing this work alongside really great people, which takes good work and makes it great work. I've worked in Teach for America before in a strategy role, and I really appreciate the proximity to the work. So everyone in this room will be most proximate to the teaching and learning, which I think matters most. So hence why I'm excited to be here today and helping facilitate today.
Okay, so I want to tell us about your roles, or our roles, and why we're presenting to you. So first of all, you guys can give me a collective awe if you want. This is my almost 4-year-old Adele. So to share that in our roles, both of us get to sit, or both of us get to have to sit in some of the more like unsavory conversations in education, where ultimately when a staff member makes a really difficult decision, for me as a principal or a principal manager, for Brian as the person in HR, we have to sit at the end of the table and conduct the investigations, and ultimately sometimes have a really hard conversation with a teacher of like, you can't work here anymore, or like, this was the impact of the work that you did on your school and your school community. We want to spend more time being acorns and less time being whistles, which is why it's really important for us to lay the expectations up front. And so when we talk about like the work today deeply, when we talk about boundaries today, when we talk about like the ethics of being an educator, I want you guys to understand where we're coming from. I want you guys to understand that like we don't believe that any educator in the room chooses to behave in an unethical manner because they're walking in and being like, I'm going to be unethical today. We also believe that in the post-COVID world, unfortunately what we've seen is we've seen more and more blurring of professional boundaries. We've seen more and more blurring of judgment, and there have been some situations this year that like the two of us have sat in the room with a teacher and a principal, and they've been really difficult and they've been really hard. And so when we talk about ethical practitioner today, we're talking about the law, we're talking about your employment, we're talking about your certification, but we're also talking about like our own children and what we want for our own children in the classroom. We're talking about the children that we serve, right? Like, I have a former student of mine in the classroom, or in the room. I want that excellence for those students in the classroom. I want them to have a great learning experience. I want their time to be spent on coaching and learning, and not on like investigations and difficult conversations. And we're here because we want to see excellent teachers. We want you to be able to persist and grow in the role, and we want you to know, like, hey, some things you just can't do in the classroom, so that you can go and live on that why that you talked about in the last session. So we're going to go into the code of ethics. So right now, this is going to be one of the technology moments. I want you guys to go ahead and open this tiny URL. You can do it on your computer or your phone. This is the Texas Educator Code of Ethics.
No QR code.
I don't have a QR code for this one, I'm sorry. tinyurl.com/txeducatorcode. You can also Google Texas Educator Code of Ethics if that's your jam. But I'm linking you here, I didn't PSPrepify or I didn't TEify this document. I am linking you straight to the Texas Educator Code of Ethics because I want you to know this is something that comes from the Texas state. So I want you guys in this part, like Brian and I are like, I think fairly joyful facilitators, lots of moments to talk. This is the one time I'm gonna ask you guys to be totally silent in this session. And I'm gonna ask that you take 5 minutes, there's 2 different links in there, to read the Texas Educator Code of Ethics. Because at the end of this session, congratulations, you will knock out a part of your certification in signing this document.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes, guys, totally independently. Read the code of ethics. If you're having a now, you'll see some of the basics about the Code of Ethics. There's a couple things I really want to emphasize. First of all, the Code of Ethics comes from ESTA, which is our State Board of Educator Certification. They are the same ones who basically determine whether or not you are ultimately eligible for and receive a certificate. This is a required session, so anyone who is involved with any ACP or certification program goes through this session. Today, you will agree upon the Code of Ethics. It is a condition for you being certified. And this will also be content that will be on your PPR. So after you take your content exam, there is an exam you take in the state of Texas called the PPR, on professional responsibilities. The Code of Ethics is one of the topics on the exam. So consider this session to be some exam prep for you as well. Okay, I want to make really clear, you're held accountable to a couple things as a teacher in the state of Texas. If you are seeking teacher certification, if you are a certified teacher, you are held accountable to the Code of Ethics. You are also accountable for your district's employee handbook. Every district has an employee handbook. If you guys went to work at YesPrep, you had a talent orientation last week. Surrounding districts, you guys will have a talent orientation in the weeks to come if you have not had so already. Every district's employee handbook is based on the Educator Code of Ethics. So what we're going to have you guys do now is we're going to have you engage in a card sort activity. So at your table, someone can hold them up for me. You guys have some envelopes. Some tables look through them, what is the most natural way, or what's the most sort of like logical way to group them into categories? You should have no more than 5 groups. And at the end, we're going to call on some different groups to share. So right now, I'm going to give you guys until 2:25. Work with your table and sort the codes into categories. Go ahead. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. All right, guys. Again, we're modeling best practices to use with your students as well. Another version of an attention getter you can use. All right. So I am actually going to call on groups randomly. So I'm going to call on instructional coaches, and if you'll raise your hand, the group closest to you will share. How did you categorize standards? So Brittany, go ahead and raise your hand. This is Jetta. All right, point to the group, and then the group closest. How did you guys categorize your standards? What were your categories? Yeah.
We grouped them by number.
Okay. So when you looked at the numbers, what trends did you see for each number of standard?
So we kind of put titles for each group that
Right.
we thought it fit under. So for the 2s, we put rights, and then for 1, illegal activity, and then for that was 2. That was 3. Sorry. And then 1 is integrity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's give that group 2 claps on 2. 1, 2. All right. The group closest to Ms. Gray. Lauren Gray, if you can raise your hand. All right, Lauren, point to the group. And then how did you all, if we can go ahead and share our attention to this group, how did you guys categorize the standards?
So we divided them up by relationships. So we had teacher-student relationships, teacher-teacher relationships, teacher-school relationships.
Awesome. So student, teacher, 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 school. I love it. Let's go ahead and give that group 2 claps on 2. 1, 2. Okay, guys, there's no right answer to this activity. So if you're looking for the answer, sorry. The goal is, so like again, thinking about like teaching best practices. This is a strategy you can use with your students as they prepare for an exam. If there's an area where there's a lot of content, the goal is to help you internalize, read through, and look for trends in the code of ethics. So my hand things over to Ryan.
Great. So we are going to delve in more deeply to some of the explicit content of our Code of Ethics standards. So as we think and we read through these, I invite everyone, if you're new to this space and you have not taught before, developing that lens is hugely critical. There are a million different things that happen in a classroom on any given day. So having some space beforehand to deeply reflect will allow it to slow down in the moment. The situations and some of the ethical behaviors we will talk about, if you do not have that filter, could slip by. So this is the time. Like we don't want to look back and say we did not take advantage of this space to deeply internalize this content. All right. So can I have a reader over here? I'll model some non-best practices too in terms of facilitation. Thank you.
The Code of Ethics sets concrete and direct expectations for educator behavior.
Great, thank you. So we are going to read these out loud, these explicit, concrete expectations. So can I get 3 readers? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Go for it.
Falsifying records, reimbursements, or requests for pay.
Being under the influence of alcohol or consuming alcoholic beverages on school property or during school activities when students are present.
Refraining from the illegal use, abuse, or distribution of controlled substances, prescription drugs, and toxic weapons. Tobacco products on campus are not permitted.
Great. So these are those general ethical expectations of education. And you may be sitting in this room saying, I absolutely would never cross these lines. And we see every year a few individuals cross these lines. So while we want to assume the best of adults, and this goes back to what Gounder said before, our baseline expectation as educators is to keep our children safe. And we cannot keep our children safe if we do not follow these baseline ethical expectations.
And guys, for the third one, I'm going to say something that may seem really obvious, but I came across it a bunch of times this year as a principal manager. That includes vaping. Vape pens are not allowed from adults on our campuses, both during professional development and during the school year.
Right. So next, professional relationships with colleagues. So let's talk about our interactions with others. Two key points. Can I have two readers on this? Thank you. 1 and 2. Oh yeah, no, yes. All right, 2 readers. Thank you.
The educator should not intentionally or knowingly subject the colleague to sexual harassment.
The educator shall not discriminate against or for a colleague on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, age, gender, disability, family status, or sexual orientation.
You can all get behind that. So whether you're a yes prep or in another district, every district will have policies by which to elevate concerns. As a precondition of our children feeling safe, we need to be safe as well. So ensure this is a great club to read your handbook to be familiar, and to have a collection of colleagues on your campus if you even suspect that these behaviors may be happening. All right, next slide. All right, and now ethical conduct to students. Can I have 4 readers in this pack? 1, thank you. 2, thank you. 3, thank you. 4, thank you.
The educator shall not reveal confidential information concerning students unless disclosure serves lawful professional purposes or is required by law.
The educator shall refrain from inappropriate communication with a student or minor, including but not limited to electronic communication such as cell phone, text messaging, email, instant messaging, blogging, or other social network communication.
The educator shall not solicit or engage in sexual conduct or a romantic relationship with a student or minor.
And the educator shall not intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly engage in physical mistreatment, neglect, or abuse of a student or minor.
Thank you. We're going to spend some more time explicitly on the relationship piece with students so that we are crystal clear. I want to draw attention to the first bullet point. Under federal law, much of our student information is protected. So being very clear on the front end of what is shareable and what is not shareable is incredibly important, and a product of building that professional community so you can get clear on what those best practices are, so you do not inadvertently share confidential student information.
The one thing I want to emphasize with y'all is that there are some situations and some rules that are very directly spelled out in the Code of Ethics. Like the Code of Ethics very clearly says, do not drink alcohol on school premises. There are other places where you have to really think critically. And sometimes Brian and I will sit in a talent conversation and be like, oh yeah, there's no rule explicitly preventing this from happening, but there is a clear lapse of judgment in a situation or a clear violation of boundaries. So those are the 2 words today we're going to really emphasize with you. Boundaries and judgment. I'm going to say it again. Boundaries and judgment. Can you guys say them for me on 3? 1, 2, 3.
Boundaries and judgment.
Thank you guys. Those are the 2 words we're going to define, we're going to experiment with, we're going to give you some real life situations that over the years Brian and I have encountered, and we're going to have you think critically about those situations with the idea of boundaries and with the idea of judgment. So the first question you guys are going to get a chance to process is around boundaries. One of the things in the Texas Code of Ethics that I really like is this idea that we are all figures that earn public trust. We receive public trust. We are in an elevated position as being educators. Our families, our parents are giving a tremendous amount of trust to us to basically be, in some ways, like the guardians of their children over the course of the school day. So as a figure who has earned and who has given public trust, I want you to think to yourself, what are some of the questions you should ask yourself when setting boundaries with a student? So an example of a question I might ask myself is, if the parents were in the room, how would they feel about me doing this with their child? Or how would they feel about me having this conversation with their child? go ahead and turn and talk to the person next to you. How else might you think about, or what questions might you ask yourself when setting boundaries with a student? Go ahead and discuss. And thank you. All right, would love to hear from 2 individuals. Question you would ask yourself when it comes to setting boundaries. Yes, go ahead.
Will I have to explain this to somebody else?
Will I have to explain this to someone else? I like that. Jose, go ahead.
If somebody were to unexpectedly walk into the room, what it would think.
I like it. Go ahead.
I should be able to explain to the parent why I had to redirect that child or do anything, and it should totally make sense.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. These are great ways to think about it. All right, can I have a KIP core member read the statement on the screen? Go ahead, thank you.
Impact and intent are not the same. Your identity and your student's identity will shape how students interpret interactions.
Okay, impact and intent are not the same. I frequently will hear from teachers, and we have those difficult conversations, but I didn't mean it that way. Or I didn't intend for the kid to feel uncomfortable. It doesn't ultimately matter. Impact is what families experience, impact is what kids experience, and so I want you just to remind yourself, impact and intent are not the same. You are ultimately held accountable to the impact.
So, let's talk about relationships for a second. In our guidance specifically on boundaries with students. So we will not read this list of behaviors, and if you Google grooming behaviors, these are the behaviors that arise. So we want to be very clear. While these are behaviors we may take with a family member, a friend, somebody near and dear to us, in aggregate, towards students, can be signs of grooming behavior. I also will say that there is no adult relationship more important than the safety of our children. And the number of times we have, thankfully, few, but few is too many, where we have found inappropriate relationships. 6 months when we talk to staff on that campus, there is a trail of adults that say, well, my gut told me something was wrong. Or 8 months ago I noticed this, but it was just one thing. And of course, none of us are going to see the full picture at any given time. That's why we have a community of people keeping our children safe. So while the intent may not be nefarious, these together can be signs of an inappropriate relationship. So we cannot take the risk to cross these lines. And this is, again, why we wrap ourselves around a community of colleagues where our behaviors are out in the open and can receive guidance from those folks if these behaviors exist.
There's a couple things I want to emphasize on this one. One is when we talk about impact and intent, I've had to have these conversations with adults where I've had to share, hey, when you did this, this exemplifies grooming behavior. 99% of the time, 100% of the time in the conversation, it's like, oh, that wasn't my intent. I care deeply about the student. This is a situation where ultimately the impact was the family, the student, perceived, experienced grooming behavior. The other thing I want to emphasize here too is like when we talk about identity. We talk here about male, female, teacher, student, female, male, 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 female, female, like gender in this situation also, like, I don't want you just to look at it in like a male, female, female, male way. Every single relationship has the opportunity to be perceived in this way if you don't establish clear boundaries with your students.
So, another key point that I'm not sure I developed immediately in my teaching career was relationship and friendship are not synonymous. And we may enter the space kind of thinking that those two are very much connected. So the importance of we, as Stephanie said before, parents entrust us with their children. We are the acting guardian during the day. It's like we need to carry ourselves as such. So we're going to get into some scenarios in a second. We are not expert in many of these situations. And the beauty of it is our school districts, by and large, have counselors that are. They are trained and they are expert in these situations. And if I try to provide advice or guidance to my children, it may cross a line in these areas. Very simple. I could acknowledge the impact. I could listen and say, I need to take you to a trained professional, or we need to contact a trained professional. Or can I send you to the guidance counselor? Can I send you to the student support counselor? So that we are not inadvertently crossing those boundaries and there's not a breach there. Question?
What if you were a social worker?
If you are a social worker, well then you're next. Yeah. So for our social workers as well, which are our guidance counselors. Great. So again, we want to stamp this piece. Our students do not exist to meet our needs. We are the caretaker. Regardless of whether they are meeting any need we have or not is completely irrelevant to the situation. So we want to view our relationships with students through that lens. We also know, we may have some psychology majors in here, folks that have looked at child development. Our goal is to build secure attachments with our students. And here are the 4 elements of secure attachment. Safety, praise, high expectations, and warmth. So we embody our communication and our interactions with students with these elements while not developing friendship with our students and meeting our own needs.
Okay guys, get ready. We're about to dive into our first scenario. I want to share with you guys, these scenarios are real. We've removed some details, changed a couple details, but overall, real scenarios that Brian and I have had to encounter over the course of the last couple of years. So as we think about the scenarios, like if you work on a campus, it's not a chance to guess, like, oh, is it this campus or this person or this person? These are things that we have encountered more than once. And then 2, now is really a chance for you to grapple, and some of these Brian and I had to be like, oh, these are really hard, what would we do? But grapple with, how does the Texas Code of Educators apply? How do boundaries and judgment apply as we dive into the situation? So I'm going to read the first situation to you. A student shares with you that they had unprotected sex with their significant other. She is terrified her parents are going to find out, and she's terrified she's going to get pregnant. She asks you to purchase Plan B for her. She gives you, and I hear you guys, reactions like this has happened. She gives you the money to do it, and she shares with you that you're the only person that she trusts to keep this confidential and not to judge her. I want you to pick, so for this, I want you to process in groups of 2 to 3. So figure that out at your table. You're going to answer 3 questions. What's hard about this situation? What's your responsibility in these whole conversations? What's your responsibility in the Texas Educator Code of Ethics? And then what do you do? I see if you guys can sort of really help me get some good answers to warm call on. We're going to take 3 minutes to talk about this scenario. Go ahead. Our team leaders are going to share any advice to call on right now. Okay, center table.
But I have a student who would actually go see Legacy to be administered birth control. So we had a very open conversation about these things. She had no issue with actually sharing that information, but that type of situation, I say, for me, even as a first year teacher, if I had to come across this, I would get someone involved, like a guidance counselor first. I know we have a staff that we can submit, so that would be my first point if I felt like I didn't want to break the trust. And then, of course, if the conversation wasn't too hard and I could refer Legacy, that would be my next point.
Absolutely, right? You try to find a trusted professional that can support the student. Brian, go ahead.
I know not everyone has I'm very loud. It was a little bit difficult to hear, so I appreciate you repeating the key point Stephanie, if possible, folks can speak up just a little.
Or stand up with you guys.
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry, thank you.
One thing that we talked about is like letting students know that they're privy to privacy, not to confidentiality. So telling them firsthand that your conversation is going to be private, but it's not confidential. I have to let an elder know. I have to let somebody in a position to help you.
And I think that's the thing, when we think about like mandatory reporting at the beginning of the year too, that's an important boundary to set with your students. Is like, I love your line, I've never heard that actually before, and I love the idea of, I can be private, I can't be confidential, because there are things I am bound to share with somebody else who has a different form of professional expertise than I do. Yes, go ahead.
And going off of that.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, so going off of that, after explaining like why you can't keep it confidential, be like, I'm glad you're coming to an adult, it's a situation that adults can be a part of, but I can't be that adult, so let's go talk to a guidance counselor and a school nurse and continue contact with resources, but thank you for coming to somebody.
Thank you. Okay, next scenario, Brian, pick us up.
All right, so scenario number 2, I'll read it and we'll follow a similar protocol. A student confides in you about aspects of their sexuality that their family does not approve of. The student shares that they feel safe sharing this with you, but asks that you do not disclose anything with their family, their peers, or other staff members. So A, what can you do to support this student? And B, what are potential areas where support might cross boundaries? Okay, go ahead. Let's dive into it.
Anymore, which is really nice. I can go home with a full voice. The feedback I got in my first year teaching at Institute was the classroom 8 doors down could hear me teaching. So I try to stay quiet when I can. All right, I heard some brilliance out there, so let's go and share some reflections.
Hey guys, so the conversation we had was, I don't know how many other people have worked in education before, but the issues that I'm having is that a lot of these scenarios are making it seem like it's black and white, and it's not. So like the expectation going into the classroom is that we're supposed to be stoic and like machine-like, and that's not how this works. Like for some of us, a lot of us are stepping into these roles as like parents to these children. So for me, if a child came out to me, the first thing I would do is thank them for trusting me. That's first. And then 2, it's not my job to out my student to the guidance counselor or their parents. But understanding that it's not black and white. So if my child, my student, not my child, if my student is in need of extra services, I can definitely direct you there. But in this space, the classroom I'm creating, you're safe to be whoever you need to be in this space. As long as you're safe. It's not
So I wanna shout you out for if we think about those 4 components of a secure attachment relationship: safety, praise, high expectations, and warmth. And everything I heard in your answer. And we do not want to insert ourselves into situations where we are not professional or expert or could misguide. So, an example came up of if a parent comes to school and approaches you and says, I'm concerned my student is in a relationship with this other student, and I want information, or I want to know, or I want you to help me. Having those stock answers in your back pocket of where you can send a parent who may have concerns that we do not have full insight into. And the default answer in my back pocket is I would love to direct you to our student support counselor. Like, they are expert and they can help provide guidance and support. Were there any other answers we want to elevate that anybody would like to touch? Okay, we'll go here and then one other.
agree with everything she's saying. I also feel as though, you do have to notify at least one person on staff, because, like she said, everything is not black and white, so we don't know, what students are going through mentally, so they might come out or, say whatever they need to say, but what comes after that, you know what I mean? There's always an after, so we have to be very prepared for that as well.
Okay, we're good.
And my comment and question would actually be, when it comes to any scenario, what is the first thing that we would have to do every single time? Like regardless of what the conversation is about, regardless of what the student may share, regardless of how they may be feeling in the moment, like so that I can make sure that I always follow the ethics or the code of ethics, what would be the pathway every single time, no matter what?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. As a 10-year principal, there was never a student support situation where I did not pull in my director of student support or my guidance counselor, my student support counselor, and say, here's the situation. Here's how I think I need to proceed. Will you check me? In any situation. And that was 20 years under a school roof supporting students, that I always wanted to make sure that I had multiple frames of reference in case my blind spot or I was not thinking through something that I needed to be thinking through. Because to be very clear, the relationships that we build with our students can sometimes blind us to our professional responsibilities, because we care deeply about them. We see them as human. We may have our own experiences that are either triggered or reminded us that make it difficult for us to be an objective eye of support for our students. So, one of the most challenging things of teaching in my mind is unpacking us. Because our students remind us of all of our brilliance and all of our past.
The only piece I would add, guys, is like affirm the student, right? Like when kids come to you with something heavy, affirm them. Make sure they know that you care and that they're safe in your classroom. And then I 100% agree with Brian. Seek out, like we are trained ultimately, and we are training you to be excellent classroom teachers. We are not trained to be mental health professionals. We are not trained to be relationship guidance professionals. And so seek out the support and set that expectation with kids from the beginning of the year that that's something that you're going to do in your classroom. Okay.
I'm going to move us on.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the question to ask is, what about documentation? And the thing I would guide you around documentation is that every district has some sort of counselor referral process. Use your counselor referral process. Like that's the best way, at least for yes prep teachers, what I will share is that is the best way to document information. That is confidential, that doesn't that's held with the counselor, and the counselor does work with it, and so that would be my recommendation to you. Okay. Scenario number 3, just for the interest of time, Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. We're going to model this scenario for the group so that we can get to some of the juicier ones.
Oh boy.
Okay, so you are a male staff member. A female student approaches you to talk in a private space. She is devastated because her boyfriend just broke up with her.
Okay. You guys ready? Okay.
Hey, Mr. Reed, I know class starts in like 3 minutes, but I really, really need to talk. And you're my favorite teacher. Like, it's been a really awful day. Can we talk in your class? I kind of want the other kids to see me right now. Can we talk in your classroom?
If we keep the door open, we can stand.
Okay. But the other kids, I think I'm crying right now, Mr. Reed. Like, I can't. I really need to talk to you.
You look incredibly upset. Are you okay?
My boyfriend just broke up with me, and like we've been together for 3 years.
God, that's got to be really hard.
I mean,
This
it's
is
so
an
embarrassing.
impromptu role play.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's so embarrassing, and like everyone's gonna be talking. I know everyone's gonna know like tomorrow.
One, I really appreciate the fact that you would share this information with me. I want to make sure you're okay. Are you able to be in class, or do you need to go right down to the student support counselor to receive some support?
There's no way I can go to class right now.
And let me refer you to Ms. Coghill, and maybe make sure you're okay.
Alright guys, obviously I put Brian on the spot there, but I want you guys to notice a couple things. When I asked Brian, you guys can just yell out on this one. When I asked Brian, can we talk privately in your room, what did he say to me? And like, I want you to feel comfortable drawing that boundary. It's not always gonna feel good. It protects the student, it protects yourself.
And just to add on to that, I would articulate to my students, there should never be an adult alone with you, so I want to model that. I want to make sure that we are not crossing that boundary, so we need to keep the door open. It's important to articulate what those behaviors are so the student develops a lens, if there's an adult, that is crossing those boundaries.
So the next topic we're going to talk about is judgment. So now we're going to answer the question of, as figures who accept a position of public trust, what does it mean to demonstrate judgment? So Brian, tell us a little bit about that.
All right, I'm back up. My role play got me, All right, our guidance around judgment. And I think this has come out in different themes and different comments. The goal is not to walk on eggshells and to try to question every single action that happens in your classroom. It's to develop the lens. And specifically our guidance around judgment. Can I have somebody read that top paragraph, please? Thank you.
At times, your authentic self and being a figure that earns public trust can come in conflict when at work or representing your district, you are deemed a representative of organizational leaders.
Got it. So, just to highlight some key points here. We are representatives of the school district that we serve. It's an important distinction that we must carry. So, again, a figure that earns public trust, there is a greater level of scrutiny on that person. So, understanding what that looks like, what that is or is not for us, is a journey to figure out what that looks like. And the discretion that comes from having to take action or not take action based upon your role as a public figure. So I think a lot of the bullet points at the bottom, when you think about sharing your identity versus sharing personal details, we want to model for our students what it means to be proud of our identity markers. That does not mean sharing personal or intimate details about that identity. Okay? So it's gray, but there's an important distinction there. To name who we are, but not go into key details that would not be released to someone that we don't have a deep friendship with. Building relationships versus giving the image of preferential treatment. We've talked about that a little bit before, and those behaviors that we saw on the other slide. But being very clear that just the appearance of impropriety is enough to trigger an investigation. So just being very clear and open with your actions. Acknowledging your beliefs versus trying to change or dismiss the beliefs of others. We are there to educate our students, not influence or guide our students to believe a certain thing. And we must be okay with diversity of opinion within that space. And then last but not least, sharing your opinion versus putting the organizational reputation at risk. So I tried to think about a bullet point here, just what would this look like? Well, we have figures in all the organizations we serve that may write op-eds. I would, if I were writing an op-ed, not say, I am Brian Reed, yes prep talent person. That would be maybe in the byline, maybe somewhere down. I'm an educator. So not leading out with your organizational identity, because it can be assumed that you were speaking on behalf of the organization, which, to be honest, like none of us do, unless it's sanctioned by the organization.
The other thing I want to share just around judgment is around how we behave in interactions. And ultimately, one of the goals we have, regardless of if it's an interaction with another staff member, with a leader, with a student, or a family, is to de-escalate. All of our partner organizations believe in giving feedback. All of our partner organizations believe in accountability. But what we want to make sure we're doing is anytime we're engaging with a student, a staff member, whoever it might be, we are doing it in a way that de-escalates and that manages emotional regulation. So what that means is it's appropriate to give feedback to a colleague or to a leader. It is not appropriate to raise your voice or to curse at somebody or to call someone names. What it means is it's appropriate to hold a student accountable. It is not appropriate to continue to engage with a student when both of you are heated or when a student is completely shut down. There are moments of judgment that you need to exercise in thinking about what is it going to take to de-escalate this situation. Brian, go ahead.
I think about this very particularly, and I love the phrase, our emotional wake. We all have an emotional wake that we are responsible for. So ensuring, and I invite everyone in here to call me out on it, as I sit as a participant in sessions, regardless of what they are, I work to actively model and show that respect for the session, and I aspire to make those around me better. So when I think about our relative emotional wake, being clear with that, and I shared this before, I think the difference between the organizations we work in and some other educational entities is adults moving in the same direction. That does not mean lack of conflict, that means appropriate conflict. All right. So, how many scenarios do you want to do?
Let's do this one for sure, and then we'll talk about
All right. So transparent facilitation. I didn't know I was going to have to role play. All right. Scenario number one. I'll read it out loud, and then we'll discuss. You have a student who shares political views that do not align with yours. You believe that their viewpoints are at times offensive and discriminatory to other students in the class. What is appropriate in the sharing of your own viewpoints? What's appropriate and inappropriate in addressing the students' views? What is appropriate and inappropriate in addressing the sentiments of other students in the class? All right, let's partner up again. Let's discuss. These situations definitely arise. And Stephanie and I are gonna just address some key points here. The questions that I ask myself are my viewpoints, or is the discussion germane to what we are learning about in class? As a civics teacher, in terms of content, and for example, there was a scenario where a substitute walked into a math classroom and started talking politics with students. And it devolved. Again, in terms of gray area, there should not be gray area. So that is a boundary crossed. Now, what we do bear responsibility for is the safety of the classroom and the social emotional safety of the students in that classroom. So my line is, as discussion crosses and shows disrespect, which is a loaded term, shows lack of care for others or blind spots for students, we can and should address the harm that's done. Stephanie, anything to add?
Yeah, a couple things I'll add. And this is like a real one that I dealt with as a principal this year. It is appropriate when it's germane to the topic to share your views. You're not a robot, that's right. You can share, this is what I believe. It is not appropriate to put down the view of others. There may be things that students share in your class that you personally find disdainful or disgusting. They are a student in your classroom, and you cannot say words that are loaded or charged to them. You can reinforce organizational beliefs. Many of the organizations that we employ have taken really strong stances around equity and protecting our students. It is appropriate to say, at Yes Prep, we believe in supporting every single student's identity when a student makes a comment that you gauge to be offensive. It is not appropriate to tell a student, you are a bigot. And like, I want to be real, because this was something I really had to process with a teacher on my campus this year. And I want you to think about, again, you can reinforce organizational beliefs, you can protect the safety of your students, but your classroom is not your political platform. Okay, we are running short on time. Brian and I want to reinforce a couple things with some of the other scenarios. This scenario is around social media, and I want to make really clear. Within 2 minutes of you walking into the classroom, kids will look you up. They are going to be looking for your social media. They are going to be trying to find you. What you post on social media is ultimately your personal choice. And as an employee at basically all of our partner organizations, if it becomes a distraction, you will be held accountable to it. And unfortunately, Brian and I have sat in situations where staff members can no longer work at Yes Prep, because that's where we are, because of decisions they made and things they posted on social media. And so I want to be really clear, if your social media is not private, we encourage it to be private. If you think something is funny, it may not be funny 2 hours later. If you're mad about something and it's the heat of the moment and you post about it, please know that a couple hours later when you're less mad, that judgment may not feel so good anymore. Your social media, you can be held accountable to. It is part of the Educator Code of Ethics as well. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is induction professional responsibilities. And you guys, like today, we've been going really hard on professional accountability and feedback for a reason. And the reason is what I shared in the beginning, which is unfortunately in the last couple years, in the post-education COVID landscape, talent issues have become a distraction. And talent issues have become a distraction from the core work of making teachers better, from the core work of kids having excellent and safe learning opportunities in the classroom. So we're going strong in induction because we want to support, like I did the principal a couple months ago on the other side of the table, and we want to make sure that you are set up for success so that the conversation on your campus focuses on learning and student safety. So during induction, we expect that you model the code of ethics, and you are held accountable to your Yes Prep and your employee handbook, but no matter what, the TE guidebook over the course of induction. So that means you're on time, you're honest in documentation during teaching excellence. That means the standards around substance abuse, social media, communication, and respectful communication with other staff members starts now. I also want to make one thing really clear for Yes Prep teachers in particular, which is that completion of the TEACP is an expectation for all new hires made after January 1st, 2023. So there may be teachers on your campus when you go back and they're like, okay, I didn't have to do this or I didn't have to do that. That has been an organizational change in policy. And so being here, getting certified is a great benefit to yourselves. It is also a requirement. And if you don't complete TE programming, or if you engage in TE in a way that does not meet professional standards, there will be progressive discipline across the organization. So your principals will receive, I talk to your principals all the time, I used to be on the principal team. They will receive a DocuSign at the end of induction about the status of completion of induction hours and all assignments. I also want to remind you, you're accountable to the employee handbook. And so, again, at Yes Prep, Brian and I want to have the growth conversations, but there can be conversations around you're being removed from the ACP. There can be conversations around your employment status if you're a Yes Prep employee, if you do not meet the professional standards. So I just want to be honest and direct there. So now commitments. Okay, I'm not going to make the time to do this one right now, but I'm going to say this again. If your social media is public, I highly, highly, highly recommend making your social media private. The other thing we're going to do now, and you're going to have 6 minutes to do this, is you guys are going to sign the code of ethics. So for this one, I do have a QR code, and I have a tiny URL. Take your choice. You are going to DocuSign this document. This document will count towards your certification portfolio, and so this will be one of those requirements that gets checked off and says is completed for your certification. So go ahead, we're not going to let you know when we're closing out, but right now take a minute to go ahead and sign the code of ethics. If you're running into a tech challenge, raise your hand, we'll help you